Welcome to Data Forward, the podcast that keeps you ahead in the fast-evolving world of enterprise AI and data management. We bring you expert insights, actionable strategies, and the latest trends to help you stay on top. Ready to shape the future of data? Let's Data Forward.
Welcome to another episode of Data Forward. Today, we're here to discuss the recently published AI Readiness Benchmark Report. And to illuminate that discussion, we're joined by Mahesh Kumar. Mahesh is the Chief Marketing Officer at Acceldata. Thanks for joining us, Mahesh.
You're most welcome.
Mahesh is the perfect person to have this discussion because he's been in the enterprise data space for many, many years and has been working on AI-related products for over a decade as both a builder and a marketer. So we're really happy to have you. Mahesh, I'd love to start with why you chose AI readiness as the topic for this report and why you think it matters so much right now.
Absolutely. So I think it's no surprise today in the industry, AI is obviously, front and center for literally every enterprise. And the importance of AI is a very critical, business accelerator. A lot of enterprises, they are not looking at it as a, something that saves cost. So if you can imagine if there is one enterprise that's doing much better there versus their competitors who are not leveraging all the benefits that AI can provide, clearly there is a competitive, sort of disadvantage for them. So I think it is becoming a business imperative, an enterprise imperative today, and being ready to take advantage of the advances that are happening at a very rapid clip is becoming very important.
Yeah, it's very timely and very critical for enterprises as we, hear on a daily basis. So tell us a little bit more about what this AI Readiness Benchmark Report is.
Sure. So when you look at AI, right, one of the most important aspects of AI is the data. The state of data to a great extent determines the outcomes on AI. There's been a lot of advances on models and things of that nature, so that there is less variability there. Right now, the biggest input factor to your outcomes really is the quality of the data and how good that is. So truly, when you start to measure readiness, you really need to start from that as a point of reference and then measure that. And that's really where our whole sort of concept for AI readiness came up. So it's really highly focused on, data quality and, the various aspects of data that need to be ready for you in order to get better outcomes in AI.
So then I guess the obvious next question is, how do we measure readiness?
Yeah. So very good question. We actually took some inspiration, from other industry benchmarks, of the similar type. In the past, I worked at GitLab and other companies where we measured this concept, of DORA report, right? DORA metrics, DevOps research and assessment. It's really about how you identify key metrics that a DevOps organization or an engineering organization can use to measure, the productivity and various other metrics that are critical for it. So the genesis for this really was that, that metric there. And we ended up sort of surveying, 150 to 200 data leaders for this particular metric. And then we had, I would say, over 82% were more than $1 billion for enterprises with have more than $1 billion in revenue, with the vast majority of them, north of 5 billion. So we really wanted to focus this effort primarily on the enterprise segment and bring a very broad perspective, right? So anytime you develop a benchmark metrics like this, obviously you have to approach that exercise with some humility, not knowing that you have all the answers at the very first day. Second piece really is have a very broad perspective, right? Even though it's Acceldata is starting this, we wanted it to be more, free from our biases. So we had to kind of make these metrics very broad, right? Not just in the areas that you're currently focused on. And then also make it a little bit different than prior benchmark reports, right? So those are some things, that thought process that we had, and we are kind of embarked on this exercise to actually not only build the benchmark but also start measuring that with surveying industry leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. Super interesting. So it sounds like the metrics, you were very intentional to select metrics that would be relevant regardless of sort of industry or size of organization or quantity, for example, of data managed, et cetera.
Absolutely. I think there were two lessons that I learned in the, while looking at some of the previous benchmarks, such as Dora, was number one, you can't select metrics that show very differently for a mid-sized
Mhm.
enterprise to a large enterprise, right? So then, for example, you can't select a velocity metric. By definition, a smaller organization is going to move much faster than a larger organization. Does that mean that the larger organization is so much worse? Probably not, because they have so many more processes in place, checks and balances that sort of create a natural slowdown in the process. So we had to intentionally pick metrics that, are less susceptible, to that kind of variation. The other piece where we also thought about really was not just looking in terms of the metrics, but also how do we get that metric better, right? So it's good enough. It's good to shine the problem, light on the problem, to say, hey, here is where you're weak. But we wanted our metrics to have answers, right, as to how do I get it better. So we've actually done that, like to be able to sort of look at, how do you sort of double click on it and get it, identify areas where you can get it better. So those are some things that we actually did very intentionally with this group of benchmarks.
So I'd love to get into a little bit more detail about how you quantified readiness. Like, how did you start to break down um, the concept of readiness into different themes?
Mhm. So, AI readiness, we thought about three big areas. The first is trust, quality, and reliability of data. Now, this is like one of the very important metrics because this determines how good your model is, right? Like, what are the scores and how predictable they are. The second aspect of it was really operational velocity. One of the things with AI and the AI era is for organizations to want to move faster, right? Which is why they're putting in a lot of AI related scoring and agents and things of that nature. How do you move faster? But is your data operations and how you get your data in shape for AI, is that able to move at the pace with which the business demands?
Mm.
So the operational velocity kind of became a very important point for us to actually measure. And the third one really is sustained readiness, right? So, which is you might be able to do something well once. Are you able to do it repeatedly, right? And are you able to do it at a reasonable cost, right?
Mm.
So we can throw all the money we want to solve something very fast or well, but that may not be economically feasible in all the other initiatives. So now, if AI is going to be pervasive in the enterprise, the efficiency with which you approach this also becomes like super important. So that's why we chose these three big ones, which is trust, quality, and reliability. The second one's really around the operational velocity, the cadence with which you can move, and the third one is sustained readiness. Can you do that in a very sustained manner over and over again at a reasonable cost?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes a ton of sense, especially, I mean, currently it seems like no budget is too large for an AI project, but of course that will pass and it will eventually be, part of the business framework where everybody has a P&L and outcomes have to deliver with investments. Okay, so I'm assuming that then each of these concepts has a metric associated with it.
Yeah. So for each of these, there is a key metric that's associated with it. And one of the innovations that we've done here is, in addition to the key metric, have what we call as contextual indicators, right? Which is like these are things that bring you more context into why that metric is the way it is.
Mhm.
Think of it as the metric kind of highlights, maybe a problem area, and the contextual indicators kind of give you potential solutions, to how you can actually improve that metric, right? So that's how each of these areas have been organized. And you can then sort of, take a look at how can you both measure and improve your outcomes.
And can you give us an example of, for example, the metric that you selected to measure trust, quality, and reliability of the data?
Yeah. So if you look at the trust, quality, and reliability of data, one of the things that we looked at really was, satisfaction levels with both the accuracy and completeness of data, right? So which is accuracy is obviously is the data that I have. Accurate completeness obviously is, do I have all the data needed to actually make the decision or improve my models or, build my models, right? So those are the two key elements of it. And we surveyed, our base around like how satisfied are you with both these aspects of it. A lot of enterprises may be satisfied with one but not the other, so we wanted a more holistic sort of indicator there. So that was like one of the key things that we actually measured in terms of measuring the trust, reliability, and quality. The second, the double clicks on that like were things like how many data assets where you have proactive alerting. You feel your trust is X, but if something goes wrong and you don't have proactive alerting, then obviously your quality suffers and the trust of data also suffers alongside with it. The second aspect was if you measure AI model failures or lack of performance, how many of that have you traced, to into data quality issues, right? So this is looking at it more from a end user consumption standpoint and then kind of tracing it back. So, a lot of enterprises kind of do these, postmortems or root cause analysis on changes, and then they trace it back to your data issues, right? So that's one. And the third piece is really around automation around privacy and security management and such sort of, and just to sort of see how can you actually not only trust the data but also trust the governance and other aspect of it that have actually gone into providing you the data. So those are some examples of contextual indicators that we're using as part of this metric.
Yeah, that's a really interesting approach. So I'm curious, I don't want to jump the gun here, but um how many of the data leaders that you surveyed and their enterprises were satisfied with the accuracy and completeness of their data?
Sure. I think this is truly a very surprising, some may say shocking number. Only 18% were really satisfied, right, with both the accuracy and completeness of data. And that number is honestly not acceptable today, especially for enterprises that want to do more AI, obviously move into the agentic era. So that number is like definitely something needs to be done. Any enterprise that is sort of in that bucket have to really take some serious steps to improve. That was one. Going on to, do you want me to discuss the other metrics also, or?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sure. Okay. Going on to operational velocity, the key metric we used here really are, how quickly, if you notice a problem, how quickly can you address that problem? Yeah.
Mm.
Some may ask, like, does that mean operational velocity? Why isn't it like how fast can you get your data products onto production and things of that nature? The problem with choosing a metric like that is highly dependent on the size of the organization, right? If I were to say, how fast can you get a data product into production? Organization of size X will have a different answer. Organizations of like a larger organization will have a slightly different answer, mainly because of, a lot more regulatory approvals, gates, and things of that nature. So, but then on the other hand, a problem has to be addressed by regardless of the size of your organization, right? So
Yeah, it's
it
pretty
doesn't matter
universal.
if it's a critical issue, large, small, medium, everybody has to address it, at least from a consumer or customer's perspective. There's an expectation that it gets addressed within a certain time frame. So that's why we kind of went into, looking at how fast can you kind of address the data issue as a key metrics for operational velocity. And then there are a bunch of contextual indicators. So the shocker here is, less than 26% did use less than 1 week. They can actually address a data problem in less than 1 week, which means, the rest of them, 74% take over a week to address a data issue the moment they notice it, right? From the moment they notice to when it actually gets closed out. Almost 60% of them take between 1 and 3 weeks, and another 17-18% take more than 3 weeks actually to address a data problem. So you can imagine the impact that it has on the business. So that was second metric around operational velocity. And the third one on sustained readiness, the key question we asked was the engineering capacity that is consumed to get your data ready for AI, right? Like how much engineering capacity do you consume to actually get it ready? The metrics I want to share with you are a little bit, like more interesting and illuminating. What we did was actually, kind of combine a crosstab of, not only the effort, but also the satisfaction, right? So, which is like people who spend more effort we kind of cross both that aspect with how satisfied are you. And when you cross the two, right, like if you look at it, what you ideally want is low effort, high satisfaction, right? Like if those two are there, you are totally in that fantastic zone, right?
This is
And
sort of a quartile matrix
quartile
then.
matrix, yeah. As you see here on the screen, you really need both of them to come together to kind of measure your performance. And as you can see, only 1% of organizations of the survey that we did answered in the affirmative, right? Which is, I have high levels of satisfaction and my effort to get there is reasonable or low, which is absolutely shocking, right? Which means that to get to that high levels of satisfactions, you either need to spend an uneconomical amount of money or
Right.
effort, or if you didn't do that, your levels of satisfaction are really bad, right? So 90 plus percentages have some level of dissatisfaction, either, in the quality, or they're not happy with how much time and effort that they're spending on it, or it becomes uneconomical for them. So these were like the key sort of findings, I would say. There are a bunch of others. Please download the report. At the end of this podcast, you'll see a link to be able to download. We measured many other areas, including what technologies are you using? What technologies do you want to invest more on? More, deep questions on privacy and governance and, security and, quality. And there's a whole aspects, cataloging, and so on and so forth.
So you covered this a little bit, but I'm curious if there are sort of a couple key things that stood out to you as being really surprising in the report.
Yeah, I think there is one I can think of is 62% of leaders said the state of governance tooling currently cannot keep pace with the organizational cadence, meaning I need to get data products out in a certain time, or I need to iterate on my ML models at a certain frequency, daily iterations, and then feature engineering and a whole bunch of other things, tuning that happens to get it better. But the regulatory aspects of it and the governance aspects of it takes me too long. So what happens is, you're iterating and improving, but then you're creating governance risks. 62% of leaders said the governance tooling that I have today cannot keep pace with where I want to be, right? So that was one. And the second one, which is also very shocking, really, honestly, 50% reported quality issues that reach their customers, right? Meaning the customers are reporting data quality and other quality related issues that they were not able to actually identify. And so that was another like a major problem area that we identified through this entire exercise.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that one really highlights just overall the importance of data quality and how essential it is to
That's right.
businesses of any size. But of course, the stakes are larger as the larger the business.
Yeah.
So if we kind of take that thread and pull on it a bit and say, what are kind of the implications of the findings here for enterprises? How do senior data leaders achieve AI readiness? I can imagine this was a bit sprung on all of us. I mean, people like you have been in the industry for a long time, so I'm sure you saw it coming. But how do senior data leaders achieve AI readiness?
Mhm. I think certainly the first one, obviously, a little self-serving, right? Which is understanding your metrics, right? We're talking about a benchmark report. Start with, at least get a sense for where we are, right? As opposed, when you compare yourself to your industry peers, I think that would be a very valuable exercise. It's not at all time consuming. These are like very standard questions. You can create an internal survey, send it out. We're happy to share the survey questions and see what comes back within your organization, and you can then sort of benchmark yourself, say, hey, this is really where we are, and you'll get some more insights as to exactly where you need to improve. So I think that would be one very important thing. The second piece really is very, I would say, more related to your strategy going forward. Yeah. AI is, the speed of development in AI is astonishing, right? How pervasive it is becoming in the enterprise, how dependent all these organizations are becoming to some form of insight or actual using AI to do their work, or getting some insights, improving decisioning. There are a whole slew of areas where AI is continuously used. So if your organization is moving at that pace, it just stands to reason that you have to leverage the power of that same technology to get yourself ready for AI. So we call it sort
Well,
of AI for AI. How do I use AI to get myself ready for AI? Because now you're sort of, it's somewhat like a diamond cutting a diamond. You use a diamond to cut a diamond. You can't, you have to have a substance as hard to cut something as hard, or, less hard than that, right? So you have to use the tools that AI gives you to kind of improve your ability to actually build better AI, right? So there are a whole slew of techniques and options there, and certainly we'd be happy to have conversations on what we are seeing in terms of state of the art, in the industry, on how people are using and where they are using, etc. And third piece is really just building the enterprise context, right? Understanding more about your enterprise, the business context, and starting to build that muscle around how do I take that and codify that, or even just collect that information from various organizations, so that it makes it easier for my AI to read and interpret it and get me in better shape to actually, do these things, more automatically with AI. So these are some three, quick steps that I can kind of highlight. There are obviously more for a longer discussion, but these things that kind of come top of mind.
and I feel like we have to talk a little bit about sort
Yeah.
of winners and losers here. What are the risks of not being ready?
Yeah. I think there are two primary risks, right? The first one is the business risk, which is, imagine your competitor doing better with AI or leveraging AI more smartly. That puts you directly at a competitive disadvantage, and revenue impacts, and market share. There's just so many, a plethora of implications to that. So this is more the offensive use case where you're creating business exposure. So second part of it is really more, in a lot of enterprises there is a compliance or regulatory aspects of it, right? So the downside of doing AI without having that, the backbone that kind of, just really like holds things together and prevents regulatory risk or compliance risk, is also an important aspect of it. So these would be, I would say, like, risks that present themselves every time when we talk to an enterprise. We talk to a lot of them, like, constantly around these topics, and they almost always kind of put these two into these two big buckets, right? It's like I have a business risk, a top line risk, a velocity risk, and then I have this regulatory, compliance risk, right?
Yeah, yeah. One particularly for enterprises, when you're at the top, there's further to fall. You have more to lose. So it makes sense that that both of those would be really top of mind.
Absolutely.
So if we move to sort of the happy path, what does it look like to get it right? What opportunities sort of lie ahead for those who do get this right?
Absolutely. I think there is let me give you a couple of examples, right? Like, these are examples derived from some of the customers that work with us. There's one of the very leading, consumer packaged good company. They, again, are using AI to better study, inventory, stockouts, shelf stockouts, also supply chain, how to optimize the supply chain and such. What they reported that, 98%, they wanted to achieve 98%. They have achieved actually 98% accuracy of inventory stats over when they have over 100,000 SKUs. So you can
Wow.
just imagine how complex your enterprise is. And this, by the way, is all a data operation, right? Because you can imagine supply chain systems, you have inventory systems, you have SKUs loaded on trucks, warehouses, stores, shelves. The data inventory is being reported from all of these places. So how do you identify anomalies in this data and understand and keep on top of it is a very critical challenge, where they use Acceldata to kind of improve those outcomes. And that's really the type of accuracy that they're talking about, 98+% accuracy over 100,000 SKUs. And this is a worldwide organization, right? Over hundreds of countries. And you can just keep breaking it down further and further and further. It's
Yeah.
just like, it's
Yeah.
a massive, complicated, environment. And so that was one that they're using it. The second one I would say is financial institutions, where they're using AI to better do customer scoring, consumer scoring models for their consumers. Who do I give this credit card offer to? Like, who do I give this an offer to, actually cashback offer, cash offers, right? Things of that nature. All of that is built on the back of AI models and such. And so there they are using technologies such as Acceldata and others to actually improve those models and get better outcomes. So those would be some two examples where enterprises that get it right kind of stay at the forefront of this. And really both are honestly are in the business, the ones that further the business. There are some other examples that are more regulatory, kind of oriented, which we can discuss at a future date. But these two kind of come to my mind.
That's fascinating and very inspiring. I think that the predictive power of having that level of sort of control and mastery of your data is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us, sort of as we start to wrap up, what are the plans for evolving this benchmark report over time?
Mm-hmm. So first thing is, this is the first report that we put out. We are going to do it for sure annually, perhaps with a greater frequency, given the pace of change of AI. It just seems like we have to start measuring this more often. But at a minimum, we'll publish this report every year for sure, right? So that's one. The second one is, like, anytime you do this, you don't always get it right? You for the first time around. So there'll be some tweaking of the key metrics and contextual indicators. We expect much more changes, and it's been designed like that. The contextual indicators are going to float more as new insights and information and technologies come on the line. So we'll add more to measure that. So that is one. Second one is really around increasing sort of the survey breadth. Right now, this time we surveyed about 150 to 200 data leaders. All of them, by the way, like VP and above, large enterprise. So it's a very, I would say, for the people we are surveying, it's a fairly large survey. It's a very, you can see even large analysts just don't survey more than 75 people. So of that, so we are going to increase that. We are already talking to some of very large sort of, I would say, like consulting companies and others, the big four, who want to be part of this effort. Some very large hyperscalers who want to be part of this effort the next time around, and very large ISVs that see value in this. So the next time around, we're going to have a good sort of collection of industry partners that are part of this. And we'll work with them to kind of refine this benchmark and kind of take it forward. So that will be some more, changes that we have in store, for the next versions of this benchmark report.
And how can people engage? How can the community engage with the benchmark report?
Yeah, I think if you're an enterprise, certainly download the report, take a look at it. We definitely welcome your feedback and criticism. on this. So you can see that email address where you can send your feedback on it. If you're one of the industry partners, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to share more details on the survey that we've done with more in-depth information. So that would be area for you to actually start getting involved. And the third piece is just post about this report in social media and others. So anything that stands out, what you find interesting, what you find surprising, places where you think we should improve it. I think all of that is sort of fair game, really, to share with us and the world. So I'd highly encourage you to kind of get involved in this to improve it. And we definitely want to, see where the viewers are on this report and, where we think we could do more.
Well, thanks so much for your time today, Mahesh. The last question I have for you is if you wanted to leave our listeners with one key takeaway about AI readiness, what would it be?
I'll leave it back. I'll leave the audience with the message that I shared earlier, right? Like focus on the power of AI for AI, right? AI for a better AI. I think that would be the one key takeaway that I would give, the viewers. And how do you use various techniques in different situations? And I think that's something that would be very important for all of us to kind of pay attention to today.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Listeners can access the report on acceldata.io, and we'll add a link here. So thank you so much, Mahesh, and thanks to all of you for listening.
Thank you, Amy. Enjoyed it.
Welcome to Data Forward, the podcast that keeps you ahead in the fast-evolving world of enterprise AI and data management. We bring you expert insights, actionable strategies, and the latest trends to help you stay on top. Ready to shape the future of data? Let's data forward.